Hello and welcome to another episode of My Dinner with Gabe. We're doing a new show this week, as in there's no co-host. It is just me having dinner by myself. My Dinner with Gabe. How's it going, y'all? So we've been trying some new things for the show lately, and this is definitely a new thing for the new show. So let's start off with a little thing I like to call box office news. I'm Gabe Van Handel, and I'm going to start that for you. Boom. Let's read the top 10. Taken 2 opened number 1. Opened first with $49.5 million. Big money, big splash, big wide action sequel opening. The numbers that 20th Century Fox was hoping for, expecting, and loving with this harebrained sequel. More Armenians and Bosnians and Croats in general getting killed and their necks snapped. Hotel Transylvania in its second week slipped to number 2 with a still strong $27 million, bringing its 2-week total up to $76. Good numbers for the $85 million budgeted film. Pitch Perfect expanded to nationwide release last week after having a very good debut in limited release. Third with $14.8 million, $21 million gross already for the $17 million budgeted film. Already profitable, surely on its way to being a success story for Universal. Looper was 4th with 12. Frankenweenie was 5th with 11.4. Not very good numbers for this film, and I'll get to that later. Although the fact that it's only budgeted at about $39 or $40 million is hopeful for the fact that this movie might turn a modest profit, but not very good numbers for a film, especially a Tim Burton film, which I'm assuming they were hoping would rank in at least second or third. 6th was End of Watch with $4 million. Trouble with the Curve was 7th, sinking down from 4th place last week with $3.8 million, bringing its total to only $29 million in its third week. Not quite a successful story for Warner Brothers on this one. House at the End of the Street was 8th, slipping from 5th last week, 3.7, bringing its total to $27 million. A big success still for Summit Entertainment's $10 million budgeted film. The Master was held steady at 9th. Last week it was 9th as well, with 1.8. Bringing its total to $12 million. Not quite the masterful numbers that the Weinstein Company was hoping to break apart with. So far, it looks like this won't even pull in half the take of There Will Be Blood, which was itself a very, very modest film at the box office. Finding Nemo 3D was 10th with 1.6, bringing its 3D total in at $39 million. Considering that film was only in 1,700 locations, its per-theater average was only 930, which is the lowest on the top 10 by a wide margin. Oops, and my computer went to... There we go. Now let's take a look at those numbers. What did they mean? What was it about? Taken 2 was was twice the opening of the first one. Third best October opening ever, behind Paranormal Activity 3 and Jackass 3D, which were the biggest splashes and scares that we've ever had in October. Isn't really a surprise, seeing as that Taken already has a great following, and this huge marketing campaign for Taken 2 laid out the return of the same character and the similar action, but with enough changes, such as the villain and locations, to not seem like a total rehash. However, it is. Formula for a successful sequel that most chains do follow, but don't market well enough. They knew that this movie was going to make a lot of money. This is no surprise. Exit polls show men and women pretty much even, suggesting this was a date night hit, despite god-awful reviews, which is usually the case with a lot of date night films. Honey, let's go. I don't want it. No one's reading reviews. Pitch Perfect was 80% female and younger. 55% was under 25. Not a surprise. Not as big of a wide release hit as they were hoping for. Some of the initial demand and interest was buried and burned off in its limited release, which quelched any fervent or overly anticipated fans or people that wanted to see Glee as a movie, just besides Glee the movie. Frankenweenie bombed on par with Pirates, the Band of Misfits. Pirates, the Band of Misfits was another stop-motion film that only opened to 11.1 and went on to slither and sink and scallywag to a very, very pitiful box office take. I don't know why studios keep investing money in stop-motion films. People don't like them. People aren't going to see them. This isn't a successful genre of filmmaking. It's a beautiful genre of filmmaking. These are wonderful films. Coraline, Pirates, Band of Misfits, Paranorman, which I have not yet seen, but which got some of the best reviews of any kid film so far this year. I'm glad that they're making these films because they're wonderful. They're wonderful treats for serious film goers and for kids if they should so be inclined to watch these movies, but they're just not raking it in, which is fine. It doesn't take away anything from the film. In 5 years, it won't change the film at all. It won't matter what beauty might be unfolded in there. Anyway, so this film was way less than Burton's last stop-motion films, The Corpse Bride, which is one of the most successful tellings or in box office history of a stop motion film. The Corpse Bride came out in 2004 with $19.1 million, was a successful film for Burton and was a successful film for stop motion in general. Way less also than Paranorman, which grossed a better 14.1 earlier this year. There's several factors. 1 week after Hotel Transylvania, releasing a film 1 week after a almost guaranteed hit on their hands. It's a strange formula. Hotel Transylvania ended up becoming the best opening for a September film ever. So going head to head with another kids film, which although they didn't advertise that Adam Sandler was doing the voice for it, for a family-friendly, slightly gross-out film that's likely to draw in a wide range of viewers and audience members across the board on both male and female, just seemed like a strange choice. Even waiting another week would have, I think, been a better choice than releasing it right away with Hotel Transylvania, or even a week before and maybe taking away some of the competition. But I guess they didn't want to stray too far away from the Halloween opening. It's kind of sad that this didn't fare better at the box office with audiences. So head to head with the traditional family release, a traditional family animation release, whereas Frankenweenie is a stop motion, which is a niche genre, and throwing black and white on top of that just isn't making for a very successful fight. Isn't making for a very even fight, I should say. Also, Burton's name on here without Johnny Depp may not be as big of a draw, even with the recent disappointment of Dark Shadows, which wasn't a mega blockbuster, but also wasn't a total disaster. So that's your box office news for this week. Take it. You like it. You don't like it. I'm sorry. You just don't like it. We're doing a show this week on Whit Stillman, who's directed many, many, many independent films. That's what we got coming up for you in just a minute. In the meantime, let's do some new releases. Let's see what's happening. This is an exciting week for movies. There's a couple good ones coming out, and even the most disappointing film that's coming. Well, I shouldn't say that. The most disappointing of the three major releases even sounds like it's a worthy watch. So let's take a look. Sinister, which is a horror film starring Ethan Hawke. And let's read the synopsis. Sinister is a frightening new thriller from the producer of Paranormal Activity and the writer-director of The Exorcism of Emily Rose. Ethan Hawke plays a true crime novelist who discovers a box of mysterious, disturbing home movies that plunge his family into the nightmarish experience of supernatural horror. Based on the trailers that I've seen for this film, it appears as though he's a true crime novelist and building up his family. Life's good, and he finds this box of just evil-looking crap, just stuff similar to the movie 8mm, just really dirty, filthy home movies that are really, really disgusting. And they start to blend into a supernatural world that he may be imagining, but that is coming out of the film, that's drawing him in or drawing him into the film. The critical consensus. The plot hinges on typically implausible horror movie behaviors and cliches and recycles countless mistakes of the genre, but Sinister delivers a surprising number of fresh, diabolical twists. So whether that's plot-related, aesthetics-related, or just related to the film, we'll have to wait and see. This movie has a 63%. It's probably about a 2.5 star thriller, but it sounds like it's very impressively made. It's well shot. It's well directed. The writing leaves something to be desired from what I've been reading, but it looks like it's a good horror film for horror fans. Let's read some reviews. Mark Olson of Los Angeles Times. As the best horror stories often do, Sinister makes clear that we are our own boogeymen, the worst monsters of all. A bad review. In its plot and even its title, the movie feels like a grab bag of every popular horror trope of the last 30 years. However, taps into the psychological terror that has been missing from a lot of modern horror films. A bone-chilling occult thriller, says Ian Buckwater, who is a very astute critic for NPR. So, I think I'll be checking this one out on video. Let's see what else is coming out. That's a definite horror must for anyone who's not going to go see Frankenweenie or isn't drawn in by Paranorman, which has already left the theaters for the most part. Argo, which looks very good, which is by far the most well-reviewed film that's coming out this weekend. This is Ben Affleck's new film. He's really proving himself to be an astute director. Gone Baby Gone was a very tense, taut thriller, very well directed. The Town was a good genre piece, a good bank robber thriller that he was not only gave one of his best performances in, but gives a very sly, very, very focused, and very discerning piece of direction, which offered a lot of humanism, a lot of plot, and a lot of structure. I think Ben Affleck is proving himself to be an amazing filmmaker, and I think through the next 20 years, he's probably only going to prove himself to be a stronger filmmaker too. He seems to be involved in intelligent action pieces that are reliant on really complex characters put into really taut moral situations where they have to make a very, very strong choice between family or between what's right. I foresee hopefully some more political thrillers, more cop thrillers. And already he's shown himself to have a knack for what Clooney tried to dip into with his directorial career, but hasn't done a very good job of. Argo, ARGO, Ben Affleck's new thriller. Based on true events. Argo chronicles the life or death covert operation to rescue 6 Americans, which unfolded behind the scenes of the Iran hostage crisis, the truth of which was unknown by the public for decades. This was recently declassified. On November 4th, 1979, as the Iranian Revolution reaches its boiling point, with Shah and etc., militants stormed the U.S. Embassy in Tehran, taking 52 Americans hostage. But in the midst of the crisis, 6 Americans managed to slip away and find refuge in the home of a Canadian ambassador. Knowing it is only a matter of time before the 6 are found out and likely killed, a CIA exfiltration specialist named Tony Menendez, Ben Affleck, comes up with a risky plan to get them safely out of the country. A plan so incredible it could only happen in the movies. Except it really happened. So, one thing that's annoying me about this ad campaign is that there are all these taglines that saying that the movie is fake, but what happened was real. In fact, there's often reels. There's reels of film and cinema that are plastered all over the posters and all over the ad campaign, blending fact and fiction, letting it know that this is just a retelling, that this is historical fiction, but that what really happened was real, and that this is a very dramatized version of these events. It's just annoying. Obviously, it's fake. Obviously, it's a frickin' movie. What the critics said. This is a conjunction, a summary. Tense, exciting, and often darkly comic. Argo recreates a historical event with vivid attention to detail and finely wrought characters. like I was just saying about Ben Affleck. Lots of detail, lots of characters, lots of excitement, lots of good drama. I'm waiting for when Ben Affleck makes a movie that'll get him some Oscar nominations or even win him an Oscar. Not just for him, not just because I like Ben Affleck. I don't particularly like Ben Affleck, but because I think that the films that he would bring out from such a challenge would be amazing, would be great. I think he's capable of much more, and he's just getting started. So, what some critics said, I'll let you know while I play the trailer of that film for you.
These cover identities were created specifically for each one of you. The only way this works, you have to know your resume back to front. They're gonna try to break you. What's your middle name? What's your middle name? Shoot him. He's an American spy.
They are calling the operation.
If they stay here, they will be taken.
If you get caught, they'll kill you.
I'm taking him through.
Lots of explosions.
Incredible true story. Rated R. Now playing.
So there's explosions, there's gunfire, and it takes place in the late 70s. So there's lots of retro haircuts, lots of retro stylings, lots of retro clothes. But it has a good look to itself. It's rendering itself to that sort of that late 70s post-Technicolor Eastman Lab look, which I really like. I love taut political thrillers of that era. 3 Days of the Condor, which is 75, but getting close to that era, and The Parallax View, which is 74, Conversation 74. But the late 70s have a look where the technology was changing a little bit, and there's sort of there's an in between period where there's definitely a discernible a look that's very different from the films of then than they are of now. The late 80s is when that started to change. I'd say about 1986 or so is when movies started to have the modern look that they have continued until about today. The late 90s especially was when that became a thing of the past. Argo has that solid kick the tires feel of those studio films from the 70s that were about something but also entertaining. Only it's as laugh outright amusing as it is sobering. That's good. Argo is a rollicking yarn, easily the most cohesive and technically accomplished of Affleck's films so far. Part of me wishes the director hadn't cast himself in the lead role. If nothing else, it proves that every so often the CIA can pull something off that, yes, Canadians are just about the nicest people on the planet. The film is a whopper of a tale, one designed for an Oscar nominations, Best Picture and Best Director among them. Argo is a movie of many parts, the sum of which can probably be described as enjoyable Hollywood hokum. It's a well-told story that's timely, topical, and thoroughly entertaining. There's some very good 3, 3.5, and 4-star reviews. If you didn't know otherwise, you'd swear this was the work of a veteran master like Soderbergh. 4-star review by Lou Lemonick of the New York Post. Let's see what my friends over at Entertainment Weekly had to say about it. A 4-star review. Argo is never less than wildly entertaining, but a major part of its power is that it so ominously captures the kickoff to the world we're in now. Gleiberman, always a man of some good, precise prose. Great criticism. So, let us continue. We have 2 more films to go over with Seven Psychopaths, which I'm very excited for. Argo I'm more excited for now. I just found out that I didn't even know what Argo was until yesterday, and I'm very, very excited about it. I don't watch a whole lot of TV. I don't have television, so sometimes it's hard for me to find out about a lot of movies. Like, I don't get as many advanced reviews, and sometimes I don't go to certain films. I don't go to as many mainstream films as I used to, so I don't get to see these trailers, which a lot of people get to see. However, when I do my film research, a lot of the times I am more interested in certain filmmakers, certain auteurs, certain actors, and some films just slip under. And that was one of them. I'm very excited, though, that I know about it. And definitely on my list to go see. Love to see it in the theater. Seven Psychopaths covers Marty, who is a struggling writer, played by Colin Farrell, who dreams of finishing his screenplay, which is entitled Seven Psychopaths. Billy, Sam Rockwell, is Marty's best friend, an unemployed actor and part-time dog thief. okay, who wants to help Marty by any means necessary. All he needs is a little focus and inspiration. Hans, Christopher Walken, is Billy's partner in crime. Okay. A religious man with a violent past, Charlie, played by Woody Harrelson, is the psychopathic gangster whose beloved dog, Billy and Hans, have just stolen. Charlie's unpredictable, extremely violent, and wouldn't think twice about killing anyone or anything associated with the theft. Marty is going to get all the focus and inspiration he needs just as long as he lives to tell the tale. Interesting premise. Probably a great screenplay. Written by Martin McDonagh, directed by Martin McDonagh, the mind behind In Bruges, which is another amazing film, an amazing screenplay, and a great performance by Colin Farrell. I would hope that so much is true of this film. Sam Rockwell is always a treat. Christopher Walken looks like he's finally slipped into something just more natural and less forced ironic and forced weird than his roles of late. When I mean of late, I mean the last 20 years. So this looks like a good rollicking time. I'll play a trailer for you here. You might not know what the heck's going on, but it'll give you a taste of some of the plot elements, some of the characters. A lot of it is very visually driven, though.
Oh, I have to pay you.
How's the dog kidnapping business?
Get a new dog?
Bonnie's gonna end up killed.
Could you get my dog back?
What the hell happened?
Some punks jumped us.
Oh, yeah.
Said they were looking for a little shih tzu. Then some other punk killed those punks. It's their blood. It's his puke.
You want to go to the bathroom, clean some of the blood and the puke off you?
I almost got
One Shih Tzu,
because you kidnapped the wrong dog.
7 psychopaths.
Wow.
I like it.
Put your hands up.
No.
I've got a gun.
I don't care.
Doesn't make any sense.
Too bad.
Rated R.
That movie looks delicious to me. I just everything about that trailer just looks hilarious and looks very enchanting and lovely and funny. Dark, twisted, violent, and comic. Let's find out what they had to say. 7 Psychopaths delivers sly cinematic commentary while serving up a heaping helping of sharp dialogue and gleeful violence. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Everything I love about action comedies, it sounds like I'm gonna get for this movie. Cool, great, tight, awesome, rowdy. Let's see what Dana Stevens from Slate had to say. All this narrative nesting and genre skipping sounds very cerebral on the page, but in practice, 7 Psychopaths is as pleasurably kinetic as can be. Full of double crosses and gunplay, sun-kissed Southern California locations. Awesome. Yes, it's a lot to keep track of, but writer-director Martin McDonagh does so with deft humor as the film hurls towards a desert climax foreshadowed in one of Bill and Marty's exchanges. Let's see what my buddies over at Entertainment Weekly had to say. Gleiberman or Schwartzbaum. Lisa Schwartzbaum gave it a B+. It's a low 3.5 stars, but an energetic and an entertained 3.5 stars. Some of their best reviews are A- or B+. I find that some of their greatest writing comes out in films that they like and that they really enjoy but don't love, that it doesn't make their best of the year list. They're both great writers. An energetically demented psycho killer comedy set in fake noir LA. 7 Psychopaths rollicks along to the unique narrative beat and language stylings of Anglo-Irish writer-director Martin McDonagh, channeling Quentin Tarantino. So this sounds like a Smoking Aces-esque type, Robert Rodriguez-esque Tarantino-feeling comedy thriller. I gotta say that I don't know how to say this very nicely, but I've really grown to hate Christopher Walken of late with his love of weird and how people just associate him with quirky weird and cute weird. It drives me fucking nuts. Okay, I'm sorry. Sorry for saying the F word. I'm sorry. So that is that. I've got one more film for you to review. John, It's crazy. It's crazy the way that this reviewer hates Christopher Walken most of the time, but when he's good walking, he's really walking around. All right, sorry, that was awful. Wow, I'm amazed that the new Kevin James film isn't even listed in the 3 major new opening films listed on Rotten Tomatoes. I wonder if the studio likes that. Probably not. You know what else they don't like? 45% comedy rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Here's my beef with Kevin James. He's not funny. The King of Queens occasionally has some funny moments. It's a show I didn't really watch very often, though, because it feels very one note, very very linear, very planned, very staged. Nothing natural about it. Yes, sitcoms are on sound stages. Yes, sitcoms are pseudo in front of these pseudo audiences. Yes, they're very overworked, overshot, overlit, overwritten, overplanned, over everything. But that sitcom really wore thin with me. It was, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's no According to Jim. It's no really bottom of the barrel sitcom show, but it was definitely a show that wore its welcome out with me. Kevin James just isn't that funny of a comedian, in my opinion. Some people love him. Some people love his direct, dry American, good old guy. I'm sorry, I don't mean good old boy or good old guy. Just good guy, American, schmaltzy, larger, gotta love me type of humor. I find that stuff obnoxious. Lately, he's just been playing careers in movies that are literally some of the stupidest things put to film this side of a Rob Schneider comedy. Very similar type of shtick. Throw you into a situation with a job, and let's see if some comedy ensues with some very predictable results. However, there are, I have to admit, about 3 or 4 moments in each of these films that are laugh out loud funny. Paul Blart Mall Cop, which is I've often referred to as something much more disgusting and much more unpolitically correct. Zookeeper, where he has the job of a zookeeper. Paul Blart Mall Cop, where he plays a security guard. And now this. And now this. What is it going to take for Kevin James to stop changing careers on us and make a good film? I know I'm forgetting another film that he was in recently where he had another career, but I don't care. In the comedy, Here Comes the Boom, former college wrestler Scott Voss is a 42-year-old apathetic biology teacher in a failing high school. When cutbacks threatened to cancel the music program and lay off its teacher, Henry Winkler, also known as the Fonz, Scott begins to raise money by moonlighting as a mixed martial artist fighter. Everyone thinks Scott is crazy, most of all the school nurse, Bella, played by Salma Hayek. But in his quest, Scott gains something he never expected as he becomes a sensation that rallies the entire school. Rated PG, directed by Frank Coraci. Oh, God, Salma Hayek is so cute. So hot. Here Comes the Boom benefits from Kevin James' genial presence, but the film doesn't deliver enough laughs to live up to its title. Yeah. Or enough satisfying plot to make up the difference. So it's boring, it's apathetic, and it's not funny. Why are people going to go to this? Why? Why are you going to this? Stop. Drives me nuts. Anyway, let's see what critics had to say about this. And it's not very nice. Oh, mean stuff. I don't think he cares, though. He's making enough money. That's for damn sure. What else was he in? Oh, yeah, and he was in Grown Ups, which was with David Spade and Adam Sandler, which is just, oh, God, just another obnoxious thing that one of the worst things to happen to us recently, of late. Us, the consumers, have to deal with. For those of you that love that kind of cinema and those kind of movies, I can't relate to you. It's nice that the hero goes to the mat for what he believes in, but he's not the only thing that comes down with a thud. Ooh, Stephanie Zarek of Film.com. Here Comes the Boom will probably connect like a haymaker with most of its intended audience. The leads are likable, but the plot, though beyond incredible, is at the very least distracting. Let's get a really bad review. Let's find one on here. The film works hard at its inoffensiveness. Throughout, jokes are left on the table. Setups never pay off in any significant way. Yikes. Yeah, mostly 2-star reviews, 2.5-star reviews. When James starts winning some bouts and becomes a contender, the movie's credibility skyrockets into Rocky territory and beyond. Call it waiting for Superman punch. It delivers repeated blows to the abdomen, to the head, and to the groin, but not often enough to the funny bone. Oh, snap! So that is your roundup and your wrap-up and your smack-up of the upcoming releases. Wow, good movies coming out besides that one. Tight. So I wanted to talk about a filmmaker who I'm really in love with right now named Whit Stillman, who is a filmmaker who represents very much the American independent zeitgeist of the auteur small filmmaker. He started off with a film called Metropolitan in 1990, which was a tiny little film with sorry, I had to type something in. Which was a film that was an unexpected sleeper hit of 1990. Very small, but very loving and very adorable. It's a film about a group of high school preps who are, in New York, in Manhattan, very, very high-end, elite academy type people in their senior year and ready to become adults and to go out in the world, dabbling the line between adulthood and childhood. Another film that he made afterwards, his second feature, Barcelona, was a film about two cousins, one of whom is a out-of-tune businessman who's caught up with all of his neuroses and all of his little habits while working abroad in Barcelona. And his cousin, who's in the Navy, who's a diplomat, comes to visit him and stay with him and starts up all sorts of trouble, but also teaches him a thing or two about life. His third feature, which was by far his most widely critically received, was The Last Days of Disco, which took place in 1981, which was a film about two women who by day are... they work for an ad agency and very typical 80s, hardworking, trying to keep up with the guys' fashion. And then by night, go out to a club, which is referenced mostly as the club, where they talk about the club, spend time at the club, think about the club, discuss the club, and do things at the club, like drugs and drink and meet men and have a abundance of male characters whom they bounce around and have many conversations with. And his latest feature, Damsels in Distress, which is his long-awaited return to the screen, which has been 14 years since he's made a feature. This is a witty, wisecracking film about four women, four college sophomores who take a young woman under their wing who's a returning student and want to teach her a thing or two about life, but she ends up teaching them a thing or two about themselves. They run a college suicide prevention clinic, and they end up offending and insulting more people than they do prevent suicides. Greta Gerwig's in this, who is a young whippersnapper hipster, and she totally takes off in this film with her unknowing cuteness. There's a lot of lines in this film, as in all of his work, where people say lines that are so shallow and just so unbelievably tempering and so telling of their personalities and their shallowness and their silliness and their offhandedness. But to us, they're clearly staged and but they're also so tender, so touching, so funny, and so revealing, and very hilarious. So here's a clip that is from Damsels in Distress, but very telling of an average type of dialogue interplay in a Whit Stillman movie, especially in a group scene, which is oftentimes, almost always, the setting for almost every scene in his films.
Hey, what are you doing here? Have you the day off?
Yeah.
This is my friend Charlie, whom I think I've mentioned. And Charlie, these are my roommates. This is Rose, and this is Heather. And Violet. Charlie works for Strategic Development Associates. He's an associate there.
You work in strategic development?
You've heard of it?
Of course, yes. My cousin Jay in Philadelphia works in strategic development.
Something business related.
Mostly business, but any kind of organization.
But only businesses pay the big bucks.
Actually, nonprofits and government pay well, too.
I suppose that's how they keep from having profits, by paying lots of money to companies like yours.
Excuse me, but aren't you in Professor Ryan's course at the ed school?
No.
You're not in Professor Ryan's Flitlit course?
No.
Flitlit, the dandy of tradition and literature? I'm sure I've seen you there.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not in any courses at the ed school. It was good to meet you. It's great to see you.
Bye.
That guy is definitely in Professor Ryan's class.
That's not possible. He has a full-time job for Strategic Development Associates.
He never got his coffee.
Why would he lie about something like that?
He's lying. I find that very attractive.
So, that's an average type of dialogue exchange. Wondering, questioning, showing the plausibility and the astuteness and the even-headedness of one character, the neuroses of another character, the in movies only stupidity of another character, and the offhanded and hilarious slight comments of another character. These are the ways that Whit Stillman wants the world to play, that he would see the world as a play in a film, the dance of life. His films look so natural, too. His films have this really, really loving, tender quality to themselves. The audio in his films are very fresh, and it always feels like you're, even indoors, it always feels like you're surrounded by a real setting, in real life, in a real place. A lot of work goes into the texturizing, not only of his images, but also his soundtrack. His first film, not so much, Metropolitan, due to budget restraints, but his later films are these very tender and touched over films. So the themes that I guess I would go over, or the recurring happenings and the styles of his film, is that his movies are very dryly overwritten, and they're they're mostly about the upper class, about the elite, or some sort of wide-minded group of people. Damsels in Distress being an exception to that, as that's more about ordinary folk. But the imaginary and the fantastic alternate literary, very emphasis on the literary, the overwritten universe of male neuroses and female questions, female obsessing, overly talkative, and very bouncing, boisterous interactions of people that can only happen in the movies. There's a beautiful simplicity in the few settings, in the returning to these few settings. There's an observant, natural lighting and very, very engrossing, banterous dialogue. In Metropolitan, the prep school elite who are overeducated way too soon and yet not experienced or worldly or broken in from childhood yet, talk of adulthood and dance in adulthood, yet have all the suffocation and all the restraints of childhood. The film is charming and vicious all at once, innocent yet thoughtful and aware. It's a multi-layered, multi-charactered novel that just happens to be on film as unobtrusively as possible. I feel that Whit Stillman is a writer first and foremost, very similar to Neil LaBute, who is first and foremost a writer and a literary figure in his own mind, first and foremost. Someone who creates characters, creates situations, and creates dialogue that dances and floats off of itself, off of one another, off of characters that are real because he creates them to be real. And with actors and performances that take these characters and fly away with them into very, very obtainable places, not so far off. In fact, it's often, his camera work is oftentimes very still, very focused, not a whole lot of movement. Even when his characters are moving, he'll place a camera in a moving car but not move the image. So the background, he keeps these steady medium shots, very naturalistic. There's comparisons to Eric Rohmer, and his films of the late 60s and early 70s of the naturalistic and very quaint and very funny, very observant type of cinema of ordinary people in surprisingly ordinary situations that are just rendered very, very charming and astute. So Metropolitan is his most awkward film, but at the time when it came out, it was so different from everything that had been presented that year. It won an Academy Award nomination, and to this day, it's still a very celebrated film. It's still a very celebrated and very looked at screenplay in terms of its development of characters. And seen as that its development of characters is its only plot device. There really isn't any event. There's no happenings. There's nothing. There's really no conflict that arises in these films besides in the last third, there's a situation where two characters are looking for a woman to get her out of a situation that they think could be dangerous to her as an excuse to go on an adventure and to intrude into her life. There's a real beauty about people sitting around talking really about nothing but feeling very important and very educated and very intellectual. And in a lot of ways they are, and at the same time they're not. Barcelona is a much quieter, a much more simple film. Sorry, that was my phone. Barcelona is a much quieter film and a much more quaint and direct film, which looks right into the eyes of these two characters and their dealings with women in another country. This is a film that looks very observantly at anti-American feelings and at the sense of anti-American sensibilities, both abroad and at home, of ourselves, of our own neuroses, of our own type, of our own understanding of ourselves as a culture. There's a lot. So there's an examination of this chemistry between men and women, and between women and women themselves as friends, and between men and other men. This is a much more precise, funny, and honest film, and strangely smaller than Metropolitan, in that there's less characters, but the characters that are examined very tightly, but in a much more relaxed sense. There's and with this, there allows a greater intimacy and a more naturalistic feeling, a closeness, a greater bond, and a greater humor and a greater love. Though these characters are very shallow, which is maybe the most endearing part of it, is that these are not like characters like Zorba. These are not people who pretend or would try to tell you that they are people of all ages, that they are the souls of the ages, that they are people that should be looked to as great examples of humanity. These are people just trying to laugh, trying to get through another day and have a good time and do what's right. Although I don't think they're trying to fight for what's right, though in the end they do. And these are much more approachable and relatist and honest people with more honest and relatable reactions than in Metropolitan, where situations of sudden humanity never quite come up as much in Metropolitan. It's more of like a couple days in the life of a couple of random snotty brats, where Barcelona is a much more approachable, much more tender, and a much more funny film. So there's a nerdy character, Fred, who lives abroad in Barcelona, and his cousin just shows up at his house and pisses him off and does everything that he can not to piss him off, but he makes him go out, he makes him meet women, he makes him do he gets him into one absurd scenario after another, and actually gets him to fall in love with a woman. And through circumstances, another woman becomes involved. Shallowness of some characters are shown to actually be great attributes, and other people's seemingly good attributes or naturalistic, not naturalistic, or altruistic intentions turn out to be very fake and flaky, and their true humanity comes out often for worse. There's a lot of politics in this film that's sort of come out of nowhere, that are under the curtain, that are under the sheets, or under the horizon that all of a sudden explode in one beautifully powerful and scary scene of violence that seemingly comes out of nowhere and that changes the course of the rest of the film, the dynamics of how all the characters relate to each other, talk to each other, and interact, and what all the interactions mean throughout the rest of the film. It's a weirdly haunting film and also a weirdly effervescent natural film that's very bouncy and sort of harmless, but it's strangely maybe his most powerful movie. The Last Days of Disco is a haunting masterpiece. It's a beautiful, stark, dark film about people, the decisions we make, and the way we fuck, and the way we screw each other over, and the way we have sex, the politics of sex, and how these politics have changed through the decades, and how the power of women and the power that women have, or that the perceived power that we have, and the roles of the sexes and the changing roles of the sexes, both through the 70s and 80s, and how these struggles, how women dealt with these struggles, and how the understanding of these struggles were laid out in conversation, and what the perception of these struggles were. And this is a film that's a very good nostalgic and fond look at an earlier era. He clearly loves disco, and Whit Stillman clearly loves disco and house music and techno of the early 90s and disco of the late 70s and early 80s. Especially the cheesier and the more say less meaningful, the better, especially for him. Damsels in Distress is a recent release which just came out on DVD a couple weeks ago, which I cannot recommend enough. The dialogue is just simply baffling in its charmingness and in its quickness. And this is a film that has all of a sudden more camera movement than any of his other films, his earlier films. This is a film that moves around, that has natural sunlight, that's shot during the day with beautiful colors, with sunlight streaming through trees, with vegetation everywhere, the look of an early fall campus, and of people wearing real clothing, of saying real things. The dialogue in this film is more natural than that in any of his other films, where it feels, his performances have always felt a little forced and a little bit very, very, like I said, performanced, and it seems rehearsed. Whereas this film feels a lot more natural, like things are changing with each take. Like the actors can't wait to see what happens. And there's an excitement and a danger to this film that wasn't present in his other movies. And all the characters seem to be questioning themselves as it goes along. While this is also his most planned film, and in that the situations are the most trite, and it's the most rehearsed, and there's the most plot, I would say, where things have to happen, where people go to places and do things, and where those things that happen are meaningful discourses for the ensuing conversations and events and the feelings of the film, of what actually happens in the movie. There's a great momentum and a simplicity and a singularity to each character's dialogue, that each character is noticeably different. Whereas in several of his other films, the characters seem to blend into sort of one zeitgeist, into one feeling, into one mode. Especially with scenes, there's definitely a purpose to each scene. Whereas in this movie, there seems to be less outright intent and less outright planned purpose of these scenes, and less need for there to be a resolution or even a conflict. There's just scenes where characters talk to each other and state things about each other's neuroses or about each other's point of view. And I gotta say, this is his funniest movie. It has the most it has the most absurd dialogue in it of any of his movies, where instead of people just saying ironic statements, they say things that are just completely hilarious and ass backwards in some cases, where these characters can only exist in the movies, but they also feel very real, like all of his movies. But this just has a natural energy to it that just felt endlessly watchable and approachable. I'd say of all of his films, this is one that I would easily most look forward to watching again. Although The Last Days of Disco is his most profound film about who we are as men and women, Damsels in Distress is by far his most entertaining and his most loving. Well, I think that about wraps it up for my show this week. It was strange not having a co-host. It was really weird being here alone in the studio. I always have someone to bounce to bounce these ideas off with someone else to offer their take, both surprising and sometimes predictable, as are my own comments. Sometimes I have no idea where some of these statements come from because I believe them to be true as they are my own opinions, but a lot of times my own observations are unplanned, unrehearsed, unthought of. They're not on notebook paper. They come from my own mind as they occur, mostly bouncing off my other co-host's words, my other co-host's thoughts, my other co-host's sense of being in our discussion of these movies. And to not have one was very weird. I noticed that I kept looking at the same spot, and I was really watching the glow of traffic pass by in the studio. So it was very odd to not have someone here to sort of be bouncing talk and ideas off myself. I was a little worried about how the pacing of the show was going to go, but I didn't really run into a rut anywhere along it. And to be honest, it seems that everything came out just fine. So maybe this is a tactic I might pull out once a month or once every other month, just to refresh myself, to really remind myself what it is I love about movies and what I love about discussing movies. I do love my new co-host, Robert Lang, who was on here last week. He's a fantastic guest and a fantastic new host, full of energy, wit, sarcasm, and a great laugh, and a great friend. Zav, as always, is a great friend and a great boss and a great mentor and a great personality and a great lover of movies and discussion and talk and of mindfulness. He's a great thinker, a culturalist, some would even say a cultural expert, and also gives me a completely different take. He's black to my white, land to my water view of movies in a lot of ways. His take is his explanation and his reasoning of film, and also of the meaning of film. And I look forward to having him back on the show again soon. Mark Borchardt is also going to be a resident co-host starting in 2 weeks. He was supposed to be in this week, and then I decided to put it off a little bit, just because I know Mark likes to way over prepare for shows, which is so amazing. His shows that he's on they're among my favorites, because the amount of energy and the amount of knowledge and the amount of expertise and brilliance and thorough understanding of why cinema is beautiful and important, gorgeous and ever far-reaching in our consciousness and psyche is just so beautiful to see. And he requires a lot of preparation time for even the simplest of subjects, or what's seemingly the smallest of subjects, I should say. So I look forward. Mark Borchardt will be on. We are going to focus on the end of the Milwaukee Film Festival, and we're going to do, hopefully by next week, have Carl Bogner and a guest either come on the show, or we're going to talk about some films that are going to be involved in the LGBT Film Festival. So Zav and I are going to get some screeners and view some material and either review, maybe not review, maybe just discuss some of these works and some of this stuff that's going to be happening in the festival, and hopefully have Carl Bogner on soon. Always a wonderful guest. Definitely my favorite film scholar, my favorite Milwaukee resident film scholar, and a brilliant mind and a brilliant man, and always full of wit and an ever-twisting joke. So that about does it for my show this week. Thank you so much for listening. I hope it wasn't too painful. We'll catch you again soon. Thanks so much. Bye.